to the We Are Film podcast with your hosts, Cameron Gallagher and Zach Bouye.
Alrighty. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We have a very special guest. You want to introduce yourself for all the listeners?
Sure. This is Jacob Chase. How's it going, everybody?
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know, like I said, you're a busy guy, and we really appreciate taking the time. And we want to talk just a lot of our listeners are filmmakers, so we wanted to kind of dive into a lot of the filmmaking, especially coming from a short to a feature. Like, that's obviously a huge jump. Obviously, you did some, is it called TV with Peacock or streaming? I'm not sure how you consider that.
Yeah, I think that's TV.
We'll call it TV, right? Yeah. We have some other cool questions too. So I guess one of the first things we want to jump into is kind of talk about taking the short Larry into the feature come play and sort of how that all feel free to take as much time or as in depth as you want.
Sure. Just dropping it on him, huh?
Yeah, we're just going to drop it right on you. Sorry.
But not like all questions.
The short, there's the sort of like short version of the story, which is that I made a short in the latest in a long line of short films I had made. And this one really connected with people. I mean, that's the luck of the situation, is that, after tons of shorts that like people liked, but certainly no one ever said, I got to make a feature out of that. This one, people, did want to make a feature out of, which was I was very fortunate. The long version of the story is that, I'd been a working writer for many years before that, and had many movies get very close at most of the studios that offered to make this feature. So like there was already a bit of a kind of pre-existing relationship with a lot of lovely executives. I was in a position where like I had sort of just done a TV show at ABC and was sort of like really had a kind of a difficult experience on that, and was really looking for the next thing that I could sort of create on my own. And that's kind of where the short came from. And then, obviously, I was already in a position to have my team involved when I made the short. And really before I even put it online, I had sold it because my team had sent it out. So
that's awesome.
So I think that, optically from sort of what you can see online or whatever, it looks like, hey, I made a short and then I got to make a feature, which is amazing. And certainly that did happen, but it's just, I think what people don't see is all the failure that happened before getting to that point. So yeah, happy to answer any other more specific questions about the process, but that's large of it.
No, that's it. We were just talking about that recently, where it's like people always see like the viral thing, but they don't see the million other things before that someone made that just didn't work or just didn't land or whatever it may be.
I do think that luckily nowadays it seems like not just in like video, but like in general, like people that are in like creative, artistic mediums, it's like the saying of like you have to have like 1,000 bad drawings before you finally have something that like looks good. So at least to that extent, it's like when people are like failing, I think hopefully it's like, oh yeah, no, that's like a super common thing before something usually gets picked up. And sometimes it seems like it's either just luck or you finally are able to like hone in your skills a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix, right? I mean, I'll be honest that I think a lot of my other shorts I had made prior to Larry, I might like more, and I think are potentially more, I don't know, have more to say and are, I don't know, more character focused and performance focused and stuff. But, and I'm obviously really proud of Larry. It just, there's the luck of it happening at a time when people were really interested in turning shorts into features, especially in the horror genre. We had a bunch of success stories with that recently. And so, it's always going to be a mix. I mean, it's like, you got to keep making stuff that you love.
Yeah.
And, I certainly had no, no thought that I would get to turn Larry into a feature when I made it. I made it because I had an idea for a short, and I love working with my friends and making stuff. And I'd been frustrated writing a bunch of stuff for many years that didn't get made. And so I needed to make something again. And then, it just happened to come at the right time when, I think what it was like Steven Spielberg had a meeting with Jason Blum and realized how like they make movies for so cheap, and really great movies. And Steven went back to his team at Amblin. This is how I've been told it. And was like, look, we need to be making these. Like I grew up making horror films. I made Jaws. I made Close Encounters. Like I made these really scary, amazing movies. And we should be doing more of that. And it was like that week my short crossed their desk, and it was just the perfect timing of like me wanting to make that feature and them wanting a feature like that.
That's so awesome. That's just incredible. Like
when you first got the opportunity, or when it first like came to you that they were like interested, was there any time where you were like, yeah, that one's really good, but I also have like a couple of these other things? Did you ever try to like push anything else before like you continued like the story of Larry?
Not in this particular case. I mean, I've worked with them on other, like with Amblin on other projects since, but the, no, I mean, this short went out there and people were super excited about what a feature version could be. And so I came up with a feature version that I was excited about, sort of based on kind of character I'd long been kind of noodling with and wanting to tell a story about. And, no, I mean, at that point you're pitching for that project, so there's a very, if you have a bird in the hand, why are you going to like tell people about like other projects? Like, no, I want to make that, of course.
So I was gonna say, one thing too that we're always interested in and we love hearing about is some of the pitch materials that people do actually use. Like, we've talked to some people and they're like, hey, I just had a short, that was it. We've talked to other people that had treatments and, full scripts and that kind of stuff. So what were some things that you had or were hoping to have or working with that kind of helped in this whole process?
Every project's different for me. I have found the further along you get, the less you kind of need, because there's an element of trust there. But I still do a fair amount. For Larry, I had the short film, and then I had a short. I think for that, I wrote like a 5-page kind of document that was like, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking, so that I didn't have to go place to place pitching for a week. And it was because there was enough interest where we could just sort of like send those 5 pages to everybody and kind of get the interest that way. But yeah, sometimes I'm, doing, I mean, look, when I'm pitching on OWAs, it's like I do pretty lengthy pitches, and now in the Zoom world, I do a lot more visuals. But I always, when I'm doing ODAs, like I'm constantly cutting sizzle reels. I mean, 90% of being a director is cutting sizzle reels. And so I do a fair amount of that. It really just kind of depends on how complicated the world is, the idea. If you have something that's like super unique that people can't picture, you got to put as much into it to like make people picture it,
Totally,
and, as someone that's, I think we all as filmmakers get a little frustrated by people's what seems like lack of imagination, because it's like, oh, I can do this, I promise, because like in our head we know we can do it, but like having been on the other side of the table and like hiring writers now and stuff, I understand like, oh, it's harder to take a chance on the writer that like hasn't written exactly the thing that I want to like be written. Like I'm more likely to hire the person who has written something that's very similar, and I can imagine it's the same on the directing side. So as much as you can like prove yourself through whatever material you can, I think is a good way to go.
I did like what you said. I don't think I've ever really heard where it's like 90% of what a director is your sizzle reel. I feel like that kind of is similar to nowadays, like in order to gain like YouTube's like fame and like success, it's 90% your thumbnail and title, where it's like if you're pitching to somebody who hasn't already seen, like the 45 minutes to like an hour's worth of shorts that you have out there, it's like what's something that you can do to really like make it short and concise that you can send over to somebody and be like, well, hey, this is something I've done, this is like what I'm experienced in.
It's like a grab. It's like can grab.
Yeah,
somebody.
when I say sizzles, what I'm referring, first of all, I say a little bit in jest that 90% is making sizzle reels, but it is true, just because like as a director, you pitch on so many projects and like you don't get most of them, and then you do sometimes. But what I'm referring to is like, less of like cutting your own work into a reel, but like for a project, doing a rip reel of like using other movies to create like fake trailers and to try to make people see the movie you're seeing. And sometimes that does involve your own footage if you have the right kind of footage, but oftentimes it's like pulling from every, movie in existence.
Yeah, right.
To try to make something that feels right.
You're just downloading every YouTube video possible, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or not downloading every YouTube video possible. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I find really interesting, and the more that we've gotten to some bigger productions ourselves, is that there's sort of parts of the process that are surprising, that you didn't see coming or you didn't really understand this happened. What was that like for you? Was there a part of directing Come Play that was like, oh, I never thought about this part of the process, or it was, really new and interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always learning stuff on different shows. I mean, I guess maybe, I mean, there's a million little things, but I think probably big things. Like I never thought about like how much your sort of UPM and line producer are, you really need to be your allies and they're, your conduit to the studio in the best case scenario and sort of, there to help fight to make the best version of this movie. And so I think, hiring that role is a tricky one with studios, because you want someone that they're going to totally trust, but you also want someone that's going to like be there to fight for the movie. So I had an amazing UPM on Come Play, and that really showed me sort of how key that position is, in a way that like when you're making shorts and stuff, it's it's often you, right? Like doing that. And the TV show I had done before Come Play was it was just a different situation is what I will say about that. But I learned a lot with that role, and I mean, gosh, I don't know. There's a million things you learn along the way, and the more I've worked with amazing actors, the more you sort of realize like everyone kind of works a little differently, and it's your job to foster a really warm and loving environment on set to like make sure the cast can do their best work in whatever way they feel they can. And I don't know, and just everyone's people, just like everyone. That's not something I necessarily just learned on Come Play, but the more you do it, the more you realize like we're all just like trying to make cool stuff.
Yeah.
And we all, ideally, you're hiring all people that like want to make the best version of this movie or TV show, and you're all just working hard to get there. So I don't know, it's a team effort. That's the biggest thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I feel like that's one thing we just learned ourselves. Like the more people you have involved, the better the production is, because everyone is like, you just realize everyone's so smart and creative, and you're like, wow, these people are amazing. Like, and I don't know, I think that's the exciting part. And actually, I was going to ask too, like on a big production, obviously there's a lot more people, there's a lot more stuff going on. How is it like getting to direct the actors on those two different scales where you're still having to do the same job? There's just maybe a lot more going on around you. What was that kind of like moving back and forth, or, moving to the feature?
Yeah, I mean, I was terrified to some degree. The first, you take little mini steps to get there, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like you're all of a sudden showing up on a giant movie and like you're in charge. It's, it starts, production meetings, and those production meetings get bigger, and you're hiring more and more people, and then you start having then you have the big production meeting with like 50 people, and then, so you're kind of slowly graduating your way up and getting more used to it. The first day on set, when you're surrounded by trucks and trailers, definitely I was like ready to vomit and just like absolutely scared. And what happened for me was that I got onto set, and I realized in that first shot that we shot that once it was me and the actors and the DP, it was exactly the same. Like it's, you're in this little bubble on set, and like you kind of don't think about the hundreds of people out there working, you know, except for when you're at lunch and everyone's together. But like other than that, like you're able to like kind of be a little bit more small depending on the scene or whatever. But you know, I realized it was really no different. I don't know if that's just the way I've always kind of worked, is like really focusing on the actors and focusing on the camera with the DP, and just like, I don't know, I was able to keep it pretty just colloquial and small and fun and happy. And I don't know, I realized it was all the same.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. I feel like not a lot of people are like, yeah, I was really nervous. That's like, that's great to hear that, you know, we're all human. We all feel those same, like, this is a lot, you know, and I assume it's probably honestly stressful too, having all those people and everyone, you know, you're like saying those production meetings, everyone's looking at you and they're, you know, they're asking you questions and things like that. How did you keep track of all of because I mean, I've heard from other directors too, that it's like a lot of questions and it's a lot of, you know, you also have to kind of stick to your guns. How do you keep yourself like organized in that?
Yeah, it's weird. You know, it is stressful to a certain degree, but it's, you know, it's this weird mix for me where it's like I said, like I definitely like needed a Xanax that first morning. Like I was terrified, but also like there is also an element that just feels like I'm kind of at home on set and in these production meetings, because I do, you know, I have this this quality that is, I imagine most directors have. And it can be debilitating, to be honest, but it is, if I write something or read something and I want to make it, I see the thing in my head and I see it as if I've already seen the movie and it's done. And as I've explained to other people, I think the job of the director is to exhaustively explain that movie that's in your head to everyone around you for a year, you know, basically. And so it's rare that someone would ask me a question about something creative and I would be like, I don't know, or even think, I don't know. You know, I would generally be like, I know the scene in my head. Oh, I'm picturing a blue phone. Like it's fairly simple. That being said, very open always to other people's opinions. And when I don't know something, which was often and still is often on things, you just ask. I mean, I think everyone would rather be to know you're willing to hear their opinions and listen to other expert ideas. And, you know, first day of set, when I got into seeing everybody, I gave a little whatever speech and was just like, look, everyone on this set is more experienced than me. Most of you are older than me. Like everyone's, you know, made a ton more movies than I have. And I'm here to like, you know, try to keep the ship afloat. But like, you know, I want this to be a team effort. If everyone has ideas, like come to me. And I think it proved to work, because I hope, you know, my reading of the situation is correct, but it feels like everyone had a pretty good time. And I've remained really close friends with a lot of people that worked on that. And some of them, like the DP, Maxime, came along with me to shoot the show I just did for Peacock. And yeah, it's I don't know. It's a balance, I guess, between stress and like feeling just confident and happy to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Continuing on the idea of other people's like opinions and ideas that are going towards like the final product, when you're shooting like an independent film or just some short, low budget thing, anything you come up with can essentially end up in the film, because it's usually just you calling the shots, and then whoever's helping out is just helping out, get that done. But how does something like that change when producers are involved? Did you happen to have any, I know we all hear like horror stories of like a committee trying to like make a film, next thing you know, it's like nothing like what you expected. It doesn't seem like that's the case with you, but did you have any experiences where like once you had someone producing it and like someone adding in their own money, they're like, hey, I had some other ideas, I'd like to kind of like maybe change this or go in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I will say is that, of course, there's always going to be horror stories.
Yeah.
But I would say that largely from my experience in the industry, most people are just trying to make the best thing that they can. And, having been a writer for many years, I've dealt with this for a long time. And, you turn in a script that you're really proud of and you've spent months of your life on, and then you get notes from the executives, and then you get notes from the head of the studio, you get notes from a director, from actors. Like, I've been in all those situations now. And it can always be a little hard because you see it one way, or you've always imagined it this way, but your job, is to, work through those politics, frankly, and to, you want the people that are funding the movie or are creatively in charge of the movie to love the movie as much as you do. You want them to be putting all of their effort into it. You want them to be putting all their marketing sort of prowess into it at the end. So when you're every step of the way, when you're casting, when you're figuring out the look, the production design, the costumes, like, of course, I got notes on all of that stuff every step of the way. I mean, like, you do, screen tests with actors and their key costumes. And I got notes after on like concerns about different costumes. And then we like redo it and try different things. And then, you're either, you have to choose your battles. It's like if there's something like they truly dislike that you love, it's like finding a middle ground or finding a way to like understand where that note's coming from. Like, this is a small, very silly example that I've never mentioned this one because no one's asked the specific question, but like in one of those screen tests, Oliver, the character, he wears this like dinosaur toothed hoodie in the movie, which is something that I, with my costume designer, had designed and she made, by hand. And the first version of it in the screen test, it sort of laid flat, and it looked good to me, but like the notes I kept getting from the studio were like, oh, it looks like he's wearing a flower around his head. And then, and if my instinct is like, of course, like, oh no, it doesn't, like, it looks great. But then like I was able to take a second and be like, okay, I can understand why they see that. Like, let's try something else. So we like redesigned the teeth and we made the hoodie so like it had to like stand upright always. And so I told them, like, understand your concerns. I don't want it to look like a flower either, which was true. Like, this is what we're going to do. I sent them new footage and new pictures. And then every single shot of the movie, the costume designer is right off set, or, the costumer on set to make sure the hoodie is like facing the right way. And that's for all days shooting the movie that was happening. And that's just a very small example of like I still got the look I was wanting at the end, but it was listening to their opinions, being respectful, having a conversation. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just the years of practice on the writing side, but like, I think treating it all as a conversation less than like, these are our notes that we're handing you from God. It's like, nobody knows totally the right answer. We're all just trying to make the best thing possible.
Yeah. I definitely feel like just trying to be as respectful as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
In your mind, I feel like that is such a new age type thing that's been really, really nice to incorporate in everything that like me and Cameron do. Luckily, we work with a writer, and there's been a lot of times where it's like he comes to us with like a script for something, maybe like a new chapter, and then we're like, yeah, we really like this. For logistics, if we're gonna try to do this on a certain budget, some of these things might have to change. And then like this area, we can feel like you're going in a certain direction. Did you want to like try to explore that a little bit more and everything like that, trying to like make sure it's like, well,
yeah, it's collaborative, and it's like you're being respectful, but it's like at the end, yeah, you're looking for like a solid, we want the same thing at the end of the day. But I love that you said a conversation. I've never heard that brought up like that, like the idea that it's not supposed to just be, like you're saying, like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. It's like, no, this is a conversation about, why this might be the better decision or maybe not the better decision.
Yeah. I mean, producers often aren't giving like, you need to do it like this, or if they are, that's not the best kind of producing. Like, usually it's like, hey, these are the issues I'm having, like this is, this line of dialogue in the movie, like, doesn't land with me, or it's, in the edit, like we went through tons of versions, and I would do versions of the movie for producers, and then you have test screenings, and then you're doing versions of the movies like based on notes from the test screenings and trying to argue on what people really mean by this whatever weird comment you got. And yeah, it's a conversation on both the writing and directing side, and you know, until you're, I don't know, Christopher Nolan or something, but you know, I don't know. I think it's our job for any kind of working director to make something that everyone can get excited about.
Yeah. I'm super interested too. I was watching another interview of yours, and you had talked about you actually shadowed Zack Snyder, I believe, right? I think that was. I'm really curious about just shadowing another director, and obviously, you know, that whole situation, because I think you had mentioned you shadowed others as well. Kind of twofold question is, you know, how that came about, and maybe how other directors or younger directors or filmmakers could look to do that kind of stuff, but also what that experience was like, because obviously that's a, you know, huge movie, and I'm assuming you probably learned so much, and I'm just super curious about that whole experience.
This was definitely something because we were talking about some questions we wanted to ask. I was like, yeah, because I don't feel like it was like a shadow and I like stepped up next to Cameron, and then I was like, it's probably more like a shadow, and I like walked out of the room and just kind of like peered through the window.
Yeah, I don't think people understand what that might mean, like to shadow a director.
Gotcha. Yeah, I that was an amazing experience shadowing Zack on Justice League. You know, I have gotten to do that with a number of wonderful directors. You know, and to be honest, I've sort of treated every writing job I've had that's had a big director attached as like a learning opportunity. You know, not only am I like writing this movie for them, but I am also end up asking them questions and like just seeing how they work. Like the pilot I had done before, like really like months before I ended up making Come Play, was John Chu was the director on that, and just sitting in every production meeting with him and like seeing how he answers questions or how he asks questions or how he treats people. Like, he's amazing. Like, and we've remained, you know, very friendly, and I learned so much just from every step of that process. You know, for the Zack Snyder one, that one was a very specific thing of how I got that. Doritos used to do this Crash the Super Bowl contest where you would make a commercial for the Super Bowl. I actually won in 2016 with a commercial I made with my friends. Part of the prize
I almost
was
made like
getting
a golden ticket joke. So it's almost sort of like that.
It is, yeah. So part of the prize was getting to shadow Zack on Justice League, which was amazing. That was definitely like the longest I had been on a set continuously shadowing someone. And you know, your job as someone shadowing is to pretty much remain unseen, or to remain not annoying, I guess is what I would say. And you sort of like, you know, every director's a little different. Like, I've sat on some sets where like directors just don't want to talk to you, and so I will just not talk to them, and I'll just kind of walk in and like see how they're blocking a scene or something, and maybe talk to them at lunch or whatever. With Zack, he was super open and gracious the whole time, and his wife and producing partner Deb, who's also amazing. And I would ask him tons of questions about his opinion on, or like his approach to blocking and how he was working with different actors, and like seeing, you know, there's so many different personalities on set, seeing how he deals with the politics of that. The studio, you know, is on set for a lot of that movie, at least while I was there. And so like seeing how he deals with the studio executive, I mean, I don't know, I can't distill everything I learned in 30 seconds. I learned a ton. It was a giant movie. It was incredible to see him work, because he is an incredible talent, but also just like wonderful with people, and so kind and generous. And you could tell like everyone just loved being there and like wanted to work with him. And that, I mean, I learned a ton, but that was one of the biggest things I learned, was just how much you're with each other for 12 hours a day or more for months at a time. Like, you got to have a good time being together. And I mean, and just seeing him roll with the punches of things, like, oh, this big actor, like, there's like a day like Lawrence Fishburne couldn't be there, so they like had to rewrite the scene the night before to like be with a different character, and like, you know, it just stuff like that, and seeing how they worked. And I got to like be with him through in the morning when he was prepping scenes all day shooting, and then he'd go to the edit at night, and I got to sit in on that stuff too. So yeah, very, very lucky I got that experience. And the other directing, shadowing stuff has been through friends of friends or through people I'm already working with as a writer. How do you get that? I mean, I think, I don't know, how do you get anything in this industry? You're trying to ask friends who you reach out to people online like you guys did with me. I mean, I think, obviously Zack Snyder is at sort of this amazing level and one of the very few filmmakers that are at that level. But like, there's plenty of other filmmakers that are, working directors in TV or making indie films or something that probably don't get asked a lot to let you shadow with them, and
right.
And I've been lucky to be able to repay the favor. I on the show I just did at Peacock, this young, really talented director, Joey, he asked if he could shadow on the set, and he came out for a week, and it was awesome. And I hope he learned a lot, and it was great having him, So I think people want to help each other out. I know I do. And my experience has been most people want to help each other out.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to talk more about the Peacock show and talk about how that was different, especially from working on a feature. Because I mean, again, I'm just assuming here, but I'm assuming there's quite a difference because of just the way the story's laid out, all that kind of stuff. So I'd love to know how that was and just sort of if there was like a main difference between the two.
I mean, you're shooting a lot faster for sure. Mm-hmm. In at least on that show, we were very, we shot 4 episodes, 4.5 hours in 20 days. So,
oh, wow.
Very, very fast. I mean, that was the thing. That was the specific difference there. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of the same stuff, actors. I mean, in my case, I was directing the last 4 of the season. So I was sort of like picking up the story. I was also a producer on the show, so I was sort of there from the beginning, but, that was definitely just more collaboration with more producers and having, I didn't write it. And so having the writer there on set, being able to like work things out with me was wonderful, because definitely it was hard on Come Play to like be, okay, we're behind schedule, I'm going to have to cut a couple scenes, and then having to stay up all night to like figure that out and then go back to set in the morning. Like that was challenging for me as both the writer and director. So it was nice to have another voice. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a different group of people, so it was a little just different in general, but I had a good time, and I loved the different sort of challenge, and it was a different tone than Come Play. So I got to sort of like have a bit more fun, I think, in terms of like dealing with this like fun mythology and these young characters that had like deal with some romance stuff as well. I mean, most of my shorts and stuff I had written before Come Play were not in the horror genre. I love kind of human drama stuff. I love P.T. Anderson. Like this kind of filmmaking, which obviously Girl in the Woods is not P.T. Anderson, but like, just getting to do a little bit, the drama stuff is what I enjoy doing kind of the most, to be honest. And those are the scenes I love directing in Come Play. I love directing those scenes, in Girl in the Woods, and I hope to do more of that.
I think one question that I've actually had for a few years, like when I think one of the main things that like drove me as like a backstory for why I kind of got into this was I was a big fan of animation and like either animated movies or TV shows, and I always liked the idea of being like a director of like an animation show where it's like, oh, there's like all these different things that you could do where like each person directs an episode, but it's not like directing a person, where on a TV show you have set characters and set styles that you have to kind of match and follow, along with like being able to tell a unique and different story. Is there any like difficulties that you had with trying to like follow those? Is it either like easier than it sounds, or is it actually a little bit more complicated of like checking in with like different things like, oh, well, this person want to do this, or like this storyline has to be able to line up? Obviously there's like writers separate and like
No, but
planning out
that
the
continuity,
major
I remember
episodes.
hearing from Michael Slovis, who talked about it on Breaking Bad, where it was like he was like the DP and he's like, I am kind of like the shepherd of the image, and like a director comes in and it's like, cool, you can do whatever you want, but it needs to make sure it kind of fits in this bubble. Like, did you find those type of things too, like challenging or yeah, the opposite, I guess, more exciting maybe?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this show was unique in that I was there from the beginning, sort of helping craft the visual language, even though I didn't direct the first four. So I didn't have a lot of like, oh, I can't do that because that wouldn't be part of the show. You know, I was kind of part of the conversations about that from the beginning. So I don't know that I'm the best director to answer that because in this particular scenario, there was nothing that like I wanted to do that I couldn't.
You got to be the Christopher Nolan for that moment.
Right. You know, and character wise, yeah, I mean, certainly it's stuff that's pre-existing, I guess, but you know, if it's a good episode of TV, the characters are going through something new in the episode. So there's still plenty to talk about. And you know, I think as we were finding this sort of first season of the show, there was things about the characters. Like we realized during the first block of episodes that like, okay, we wanted to like kind of, you know, not change one of the characters, but like evolve one of the characters or two of the characters. Right. And so, yeah, I that part of it was not really a challenging on this particular show, but I could imagine it would be difficult if you're like stepping into the fourth season of a show and you're just doing an episode. It's like, you know, I think it would be both fun and sort of, you know, to be on one, you know, directing one of my favorite shows, but also could probably be a little bit like, I can't really like put my stamp on it as much as I would normally like to. So yeah, I don't know. Ask me again when I've gotten to do more of that.
So what do you think is the most challenging, you know, we've recently sort of stepped into the business world of filmmaking, and you know, it's honestly been kind of wild because it's a new experience and something that we didn't know. You know, you start just making shorts and you're like, cool, I want to do this.
And me as like a producer, it's getting scary because like for the last like 2 years, it's like producing a short film on our own. It's just like, well, I know what needs to be on set in order to make things go smooth, so I just got to make sure that those things are on set when we start shooting. But now it's like, oh, now we actually need to like get in contacts.
It's bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Figure out like, oh, different names are better to work with than someone else.
What's it been like for you kind of getting that bit? I mean, I know you said you did a lot of writing too, so it's like that, you know, you probably already had some expertise in that, but what was it like sort of transitioning to, you know, this is more of a business than it is just like a sort of a hobby, I guess. You know, how was that? And like, were there things that you like really learned or picked up on that like, oh, you know, just for a lot of listeners and honestly ourselves too, that don't maybe understand a lot of this stuff?
Do you mean like just how do I make a living doing this? Or
Well, no, sorry.
what?
Yeah. Like, cause we're, you know,
Like-
for instance, like one of the things that we've been thinking about recently is like, cause we talked to a couple of filmmakers that were like, oh, we're just going to make a film because it's a product. And they're like, we can sell this product. And then we've heard other people that are like, well, if you make a short, it's not a product, like you can't sell it, but you can pitch it and potentially sell it. So it's a lot of these different things we've been sort of learning as the business end, or like, you know, oh yeah, like you can't just go out with your friends and shoot a film. You know, you have to, you know, everyone has pay and hours, and you know, it's much more of a business. So yeah, just be curious what that was like.
Well, gosh, I mean, first of all, you can go make a movie with your friends. No one's stopping you from doing that. You know, the bigger it gets, obviously, the more it costs and more whatever. But, you know, you can write something that's small enough for you and your friends to make. I mean, I think even with the Larry short film, you know, honestly, like I was just talking about this with my friend actually yesterday. That like I very much miss like being just out of college and young, and like everyone wants to just make stuff for free and help each other out. Like, you know, that was whatever 15 years ago now for me. And it's like, so now when I make shorts, it kind of costs me more money because I do kind of have to pay a lot more people, and it sucks. And I mean, it doesn't suck to pay people. I love to like help keep people employed, but like I wish I still sort of had that scrappy, hungry group of friends and that network. So the more you can sort of hold on to that when you do have that group of people, like great, like please do that. And I'm jealous of you guys. In terms of like the business side of like what makes sense to do to like try to get the movie made or try to get the feature made, it's honestly like there is no one right answer. I mean, like I said, the short I made was not a proof of concept for a feature. It was just another short in a long line of shorts I had made. And every short I have made has done something for me, whether it's a spec commercial I made for Doritos, right? Or a drama romance short film I made that like got me, in the room and to potentially pitch on some writing jobs, right? Or like won a film festival. And so like I got a couple more contacts for that, or like every short has like done something in different ways. And all I know for sure is that the best thing I know to do is to do the stuff that you're excited about. And if you worry too much about like, is this short going to be a proof of concept for this? And what if it's not? And what if, it doesn't work? Like if you start thinking about that stuff too much, you stop being productive and stop making stuff. And I truly believe this is an industry that it's a numbers game. And just like the more stuff you are creating, whether it's on the page with writing, short films, feature films, commercial, whatever, like you have to do or want to do, the more of that you're doing, one, the better you'll get. Two, the more chances you'll have of like someone seeing it and wanting to do something with you, whatever that is. And three, at the end of the day, then you've created something that you're proud of, that you're excited about. And it's not just something that's like a means to an end. Because I've certainly had friends that have like made short films that sort of don't stand on their own, that were just like the first scene of a feature, which maybe can work and could be great. But also I know that those particular friends of mine are frustrated because now they have this short film that sort of like doesn't work without the script, and no one wanted to make that. And so now they sort of have something that isn't really good for much. So anyway, I don't know, all that to say, like, making stuff you're excited about is kind of the only business thing I know how to do. And when you're starting to pitch on like open writing assignments and open directing assignments, you're sort of making a judgment call at different parts of your career. Like earlier in my career, the very first writing / directing job I got, which was like in 2000, I think 11 or 12. I put so much effort into that thing, probably way more effort than any other director pitching on it. It was a retelling of the Jekyll and Hyde story that had a pre-existing script, but they wanted to do something from scratch. I came in, I was an editor for years, and this was a company that I was editing a movie for at the time. And I, as an editor, I would always sort of like, when I got comfortable with the producer, sort of slowly start to like let them know like, hey, I want to direct too, or I want to write, and like slip them my stuff. Anyway, so that's how I heard about this job. And they asked me if I wanted to pitch on it. I went out and I shot an entire scene from the movie that I thought up. I had a very lengthy pitch. I had a whole like visual lookbook. I also had a sizzle reel, and then I also had some like previs I did, where like I used to use this like 3D previs software, and I like previs this whole like sequence. Anyway, I did all that. I pitched it all. The pitch was probably an hour long, like way longer than anything I ever do now. But I got the job, and at different phases of your career, you're sort of like doing different things to like whatever you think you need to do to get the job. And now when there's a job I'm really excited about, I still do a fair amount of that stuff. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's hard to answer that question because the business side is so different for every job. I don't even know if I answered any of your questions.
No, that's totally, no, I'm glad you're so candid, because I do feel like a lot of people kind of like hold back a little bit, and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And they give us the kind of like the scripted version. But I love that you're being candid about it. Cause I think, for us, I mean, obviously we're both filmmakers, and a lot of the people that listen to us, they're all filmmakers. So it's nice to know that, we all kind of have a very similar way of thinking. That's the thing that I feel like we learn every time we interview someone. It's like, oh, this is kind of the same feelings and thought process, and I'm glad that we're not the only ones. Like,
it's nice that it's not just like a solid like echo chamber, though. It's always like a little bit of a different like outlook on things. So
yeah, definitely. So it kind of wrapping up here, is there like one thing that you would love to give advice? And I know this is a big, broad question, kind of, but one piece of advice to, everyone gives advice to young filmmakers, but I kind of am more curious about those filmmakers that have been maybe doing it and they know how to make a short, and they know how to, tell a story and that sort of stuff. What type of advice do you give to someone like that?
Advice to like get more features made and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think honestly, I kind of already said it, which is that it is a numbers game. And I mean, I have to listen to my own advice sometimes because, like I said, like I know I'm not old, but like I'm 35, and that is, I don't have the network and the stamina and whatever, that I did when I was 20 and trying to make this stuff. And so it can be hard to like keep churning out new content. But I do think it's important. And, I try to, for every script I am writing for somebody, an open writing assignment generally, for every one of those, I try to write a spec. I don't always have the time. And like this last year, I did not take my own advice and I did not have time to write a spec, but I'm trying now to write another spec just because like you can get kind of caught up in the writing assignment game, and, you make a lovely living, which is nice. And like, I'm very lucky to support myself as a writer. But I want to direct more, and I'm not where I want to be as a filmmaker. I want to be able to get more, and so I know part of that is like continuing to create my own stuff. And a lot of the stuff I'm hired to write are of a much bigger budget level than I would be allowed to direct at this moment, I think. And so like trying to write more stuff that's like just mine, that I can control, that my agents can like try to help me set up as like, okay, my next directing vehicle. And so having more of those things. I also do think it's important as an older is
right.
Not,
You're young, right? We're all young here.
But as someone that's a bit more, slightly more experienced than a just starting out filmmaker, you have to be able to support yourself and your family. And so finding the thing that's like going to help you do that, I think, is important. For me, it's writing. For other filmmakers, it's directing commercials or music videos, or editing or whatever. I think it's important that you can sustain yourself financially so that you have the room mentally to like keep creating. That's the biggest thing that like my career has bought me on the writing side, is just the ability to like take time off and continue working on my own stuff and try to get stuff made. I'm able to afford to make short films because I continue to sustain my writing career. Right. So I do think that's kind of just the reality of our profession. And like even the best, most successful directors, well, not the most successful, there's like 20 guys, right? And most of them are guys, unfortunately, but like there's 20 people or so that like make their living as a director, make a movie a year or something, and sustain themselves that way. And then there's some TV directors that do that too. But like the vast majority of directors in the DGA are like not, millionaires who are like able to like sustain their families. And unfortunately, so I do think I know a lot of directors who have turned to writing, and also, thinking about it from like your team's perspective, like on a, from your agent or manager, like the more stuff you generate for them, the more they're going to be able to help sell you, help get you out there. Mm-hmm. And the more of whatever your quote unquote day job is, writing or directing commercials or music videos or whatever, like the more people you're going to meet, the more connections you're going to make to try to get those features made. So yeah, I don't know. That's my advice. Do as much as you possibly can stomach, and hopefully without, isolating and ruining your family in the process.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I think a lot of people will be very excited to listen to some nice candid takes for once. So I'm excited. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hope it was helpful in some way.
Absolutely.